There was a man named Anthony who lived in a town. He had a small but beautiful house. He lived with his wife Elizabeth and their 2 daughters, Kate and Lily. Anthony worked hard as a laborer, but his salary was very low. He could barely afford groceries and bills. Elizabeth was worried because their daughter's marriage and other expenses needed more money. She was very good at stitching and had a diploma in dress designing. Before her marriage, she used to stitch, and people loved her work. After marriage, Anthony didn't allow her to continue. He told her that now she was married, taking care of the house was enough work for her. Not long after, Kate was born, and soon after, Lily arrived. Her days became even busier. Kate recently finished university, and Lily was now in university. Now, Elizabeth wanted to start stitching again. Kate, their older daughter, was very sensible. She knew her father barely made enough to cover the house expenses. She never asked her parents for extra money. Instead, she often used her savings for things like groceries. Lily, on the other hand, often asked for money. She would spend her pocket money and then ask her mother for more for things like shoes or makeup. Kate and her mother told her not to do this, but Lily didn't listen. At the kitchen table, Elizabeth and Lily and Kate sat down for lunch. The table was filled with simple dishes: rice, bread, salad, and some freshly cooked chicken. Elizabeth spoke up.
"I want to start stitching again, but your dad won't allow me."
Lily said quickly,
"Oh, Mom. Then I can take money from you."
Kate said,
"Lily, please stop. Mom, please continue."
Elizabeth said,
"I want you to talk to your dad. He will listen to you, I'm sure."
Kate smiled and said,
"Don't worry, Mom. I will talk to him. And please teach me so I can help you."
Elizabeth shook her head.
"No, my darling. You are already busy with housework. I will manage, but you can help by getting orders."
Kate smiled.
"Of course, Mom."
Lily jumped in.
"Oh yes. I can ask my friends for orders."
They continued their lunch, talking together. Mrs. Laura lived next door with her son John. He had a small business, which he ran with hard work. This business was his father's. He passed away a few years ago. Laura loved her only son. She was good at baking and cooking. John loved his mother's baking, especially. He liked everything neat and clean. He wanted everything in its place. This was because of his mother. Laura didn't like any mess in the house. She did all the housework herself. John often insisted on at least hiring a maid. But Laura always said no. One morning, John woke up early and took a bath while his mother, Mrs. Laura, was busy in the kitchen. The table was set with toast, eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, pancakes, cheese, jam, and tea. John walked in and sat down. He looked at the table and said,
"Mom, we should hire a maid. I don't want you working like this."
Laura smiled.
Don't worry, my son. I'm not tired from the work,
she said, pouring tea into his cup. They enjoyed their meal together. One night after dinner, Kate spoke up.
Dad. Mom wants to start her stitching work again. Please give her permission.
Anthony thought for a moment and then said,
All right. I think now your mother can work. You both are grown up and can manage the house. She can easily do her work now.
Kate and Lily decided to promote their mother's work and named her shop Elegant Stitches. They told neighbors and friends about it, taking orders for dresses and alterations. One evening, Lily said,
Mom, my friend wants a party dress stitched by you.
Kate added,
And Mrs. Brown wants curtains for her living room.
Elizabeth smiled and replied,
Okay. Take fabrics.
Word spread about Elegant Stitches, and soon neighbors began coming to give orders. One morning, Mrs. Laura came and said,
Elizabeth. Could you stitch a gown for my niece's wedding?
Elizabeth nodded.
Of course.
Later, Kate and Lily brought more orders from their friends. Lily said,
Mom, Sarah wants 2 skirts stitched by next week.
Kate added,
And Mrs. Green needs some pillow covers.
Elizabeth smiled warmly.
Okay.
One evening, Mrs. Laura came to pick up her gown and paid the charges. As she left, she noticed Lily still sleeping in her room, while Kate was working in the kitchen. Mrs. Laura thought,
Kate is such a good girl. But Lily is the opposite of her sister.
Kate was busy folding dresses and placing them neatly in her cupboard. When Lily sat at her dressing table and sighed,
Kate, I don't have enough makeup to go anywhere. I need some new dresses.
Kate looked up and said,
You know how hard Mom and Dad are working for us. The kitchen and utility bills are enough to pay. We can't keep asking them for more. You should manage with your pocket money.
One evening, as Elizabeth was busy with her stitching, Kate came from the kitchen and said,
Mom, the groceries are nearly finished.
Elizabeth looked up and said,
I need to finish this order. Please, you and Lily go.
Kate nodded and went to tell Lily. Both girls grabbed their savings, and Elizabeth gave them money for the groceries. They headed to the market after groceries. Lily started shopping and quickly spent all her money. Meanwhile, Kate used her savings to buy the cushion covers. One day, Mrs. Laura said,
John, it's time you thought about marriage.
John smiled and replied,
Yes, Mom. I want to marry Lily. I like her.
Mrs. Laura frowned and said,
Oh no. She is careless. Doesn't help with chores. And spends too much money.
John replied,
But I want to marry her.
Mrs. Laura sighed.
I can't agree.
John became quiet and stopped talking to her. After 2 days, Mrs. Laura went to his room and said,
I think we should test both of them. After that, if you still want to marry Lily, I won't object.
John agreed. The next afternoon, Mrs. Laura went to Anthony's house and said,
John's guest is coming for dinner tonight. I need both of you to help.
Kate arrived with Lily, though Lily didn't want to come. Lily was helping in the kitchen, but everything quickly became a mess. Flour was everywhere, and Lily accidentally broke 2 glass bowls. The pots were clanging. Kate and Mrs. Laura looked worried, cleaning up as best as they could. John was watching all this, and was getting tense. Finally, Mrs. Laura said,
Lily, I think you are tired. Please, go and rest.
That night, Mrs. Laura asked,
So, what is your decision?
John sighed and said,
Mom, I can't marry Lily. I think she doesn't want to work. You were right. I should marry Kate. She is the best choice for me.
Mrs. Laura smiled and replied,
Then I will talk to Elizabeth.
Moral: hard work is more valuable than beauty.